Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today we're going to talk about 20 or so August book releases that I'm really excited for. This is a list of primarily horror releases, but we do have some fantasy on here as well. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I will leave all of the book information listed in the description bar down below, as well as I will have the book's release date and then also the cover on screen with me as I'm talking about it. Grab a snack, grab a drink. This might be a little bit of a longer one, and let's get to talking. The first release date is August 5th, right at the beginning of the month, and the first book I want to talk about is The Faceless Thing We Adore by Hester Steele. And first of all, let's just take a moment for this cover. I love a horror, a speculative fiction that isn't afraid to diverge from the reds and the blacks and the traditionally scary colors and go for something a little bit more bright, and I think this cover is just super stunning. The description for this one says, "Eat, Pray, Love goes full Lovecraft in this queer, feel-good cosmic horror that reflects on gaslighting and emotional abuse." At the beginning of this book, main character Aoife quits her job, leaves her manipulative boyfriend, and escapes to the isolated shores of the farmstead commune. There, among its charismatic and hedonistic residents, Aoife finds everything she's been missing: a community that adores her, the freedom to indulge, and the promise to be a part of something miraculous. But darkness underpins her airy new way of life. When Aoife's boring old life comes crashing into her bold new one, loyalties are tested, unleashing a spiral of unspeakable violence that threatens to fracture reality itself. So definitely looking forward to this one. I think with the nods to Eat, Pray, Love, this may be a little bit like comedic horror. I'm not too sure. The Lovecraft elements imply that this is cosmic, which is not usually something I'm super excited about, but I do love a cult story, so definitely looking forward to checking this one out. Next up, we have Tantrum by Rachel Eve Moulton. This is also releasing on the 5th. The tagline for this one is "A mother's love knows no bounds." In this electric horror novel from the author of The Insatiable Volt Sisters, an exhausted mother thinks her newborn might be a monster. She's right. When the nurses handed Lucia to her mother Thea, Thea just knew her baby girl was a monster. Not only was Lucia born with a full set of teeth and a devilish glint in her eye, but she's always hungry, indiscriminately so. Crackling with originality and dark humor, Rachel Eve Moulton's Tantrum is a provocative exploration of familial debt, duty, and the darker side of motherhood. I do love a good motherhood horror. What's interesting about this one to me is that it kind of seems like we're not debating whether or not it's all in the mother's head. Is this a symptom of postpartum depression or something like that? But it seems like she knows from the jump her child is a monster, and she has to figure out how to parent that monster and ease that hunger. This one also, from the blurbs, looks like it is also going to be a little satirical, a little comedic alongside with those horror elements. Next up, also coming out the 5th, we have This Is My Body by Lindsay King Miller. And full disclosure, I did not like the last thing that this author wrote, but the subject matter of this one is really intriguing to me. Hits a lot of buzzwords, so I am going to give this author a second chance. The book that I'm talking about is The Z Word that I didn't like, but I don't tend to like zombie stories, so I'm thinking maybe this one will work a little bit better for me. This one is also, it says it's also darkly funny, so I guess horror comedy is having a moment, at least in August. But this is a gripping, emotional, and darkly funny queer horror novel about family trauma and possession for fans of Rachel Harrison and Catriona Ward. I love Rachel Harrison, I love Catriona Ward. I also love a good possession story, so I am really interested in this premise. Gay single mom Bridget always thought that cutting ties with her extremist Catholic family was the best thing she could have done for her daughter Dylan and for herself. But when Dylan starts having terrifying fits of unnatural violence, Bridget can't shake her memories of a girl from her childhood who behaved the same way until Bridget's uncle, Father Angus, performed an exorcism. Convinced that her daughter is suffering from possession, Bridget does the one thing that she swears she would never do. She goes home. She thinks that Father Angus is the only person that can help her daughter. This Is My Body is a piercing journey into religious trauma and childhood shame. name, building towards a heart-pounding, twisty climax that will spin your head all the way around. I don't know how I feel about comedic tones with this subject matter, but I do tend to really love possession horror, so I will be checking this one out. Next up, also coming out the 5th, we have a fantasy, Mistress of Bones by Maria Z. Medina, and this is an epic, multi-point of view debut fantasy, perfect for fans of The Bone Shard Daughter and Six of Crows, where a necromancer trying to resurrect her sister gets embroiled in bigger world-ending plans instead. Necromancer Azul del Arroyo only wants one thing: to steal her sister back from death by reclaiming her sister's bones. But the emissary of the Lord Death will do anything to stop her, no matter how alluring he finds her. As their paths collide, they're drawn into a deadly game of pawns and power, with a count who begrudgingly works for a child king, a faceless witch who transforms the bones of gods into dreams she can peddle, and a long-lost half-brother with a secret of his own, and soon realize the fate of the lands is hanging in the balance. Swashbuckling, grand, and tragically romantic, Mistress of Bones is a can't-miss start to a duology about love, loss, and of course, death. I'm really intrigued about this one because I love The Bone Shard Daughter, and I love the idea of necromancy being the magic system in a fantasy world. I do love a chunky book with a lot of POVs when it comes to fantasy, so I am looking forward to this one. Now, moving on to the release date of August 12th, we have An Evil Premise by T. Marie Vandelly, and I believe this one is a horror thriller. I'm not too sure, kind of skates the lines between those two genres, but this one is a mind-bending, thrilling meta novel about possession, insanity, and the lengths a writer will go to find inspiration. When a bizarre accident leaves her sister, best-selling author Deirdre Baldwin, in a coma, Jewel rushes to her bedside. Though the sisters are not close, she wants to do anything she can for her sister, include finishing up her last manuscript that she was working on before she got into this accident. Jewel is a self-published writer. She's desperate for a big break, so she promises her sister's editor that she can make this by the deadline, but the story is unsettling. It begins with a writer who's looking for inspiration, who finds an unclaimed manuscript. Something is not quite right with the contents of the manuscript, and Jewel is also scared by the fact that the manuscript seems to emulate the situation that she is now put in. Terrified of losing her sanity, but equally terrified of losing her one shot at success, Jewel tries to find a story somewhere in the carnage. So I do love a good metafiction book. Meta books have really been working for me this year, and I think this could be very fascinating, especially following writers, where we're following a writer who puts herself in a situation, finds a manuscript that details the exact situation that she's found herself in, and also I think this will also play with the sibling dynamics, sister relationships, so I am intrigued by this one and I can't wait to check out this metafiction novel. The next book also comes out the 12th, and that is A Game in Yellow by Hailey Piper, and this is Euphoria meets Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, following a couple whose search to spice up their sex life leads them down a path of madness. A kink-fixated couple, Carmen and Blanca, have been in a rut. That is until Blanca discovers the enigmatic Smoke in an understreet drug den, who holds pages to a strange play, The King in Yellow. Read too much and you'll fall into madness, but read just a little and pull back, and it gives you an adrenaline rush of survivor's euphoria. Bram Stoker award-winning author Hailey Piper masterfully blends horror, erotica, and psychological thriller in this captivating and chilling story. I love what Hailey Piper is doing in like the cosmic horror sphere. I already said it earlier in this video, but cosmic horror is not a subgenre of horror that is my go-to. It's not my favorite by any means, but something about the way that Hailey Piper uses cosmic tropes and cosmic stories to tell her stories are just so fascinating to me, and that's why I'm picking this one up. I'm a little nervous about the erotica in this because it says it's a blend of horror and erotica, erotica. I'm not usually an erotica reader, but I will give it a shot for Hailey Piper. Next up, coming out August 12th, we have The Guest Children by Patrick Tarr, and this is about the search for two missing children that goes terribly wrong in this haunting and insidiously creepy ghost story debut. This is historical horror, so it says, with terror mounting in 1940 London, thousands of guest children were evacuated out of England to escape the bombings. Two of those children, Michael and Francis Hawksby, were never seen again. Randall Sturgis wanted to do his part in the war, but stayed home instead to look after his troubled younger brother. Impoverished, shamed as a coward, and running out of work options as veterans come home, he's asked to investigate the disappearance of the Hawksby children, and he agrees. Reluctantly leaving his brother behind, Randall follows the children's trail to a remote corner of northern Ontario where he finds an isolated resort. There's no sign of the children. He's certain something terrible has happened to them, linked to a spectral presence he senses around the lodge and glimpses out of the corner of his eye. The Guest Children is vividly atmospheric, layered, and twisty, and is sure to appeal to fans of Shutter Island and the others. It's interesting that the two comp titles are movies, but then again, Patrick Tarr, this is his debut book, but he has written stories before. He spent many years working in various roles in film production before becoming a screenwriter. I love a paranormal investigation, and this one seems like it's really going to deliver on a creepy atmosphere. Also coming out the 12th, we have House of Monstrous Women by Daphne Fama, and this is about a young woman who is drawn into a dangerous game after being invited to the maze-like home of her childhood friend, a rumored witch, in this gothic horror set in 1986 Philippines. In this game, there is one rule, and that is to survive. Orphaned after her father's political campaign ended in tragedy, Josephine is alone taking care of the family home, while her older brother is off in Manila where revolution brews. But an unexpected invitation from her childhood friend Haraya to her house offers an escape. Why don't you come visit and we can play games like we used to? If Josephine wins, she'll get whatever her heart desires. Josephine's heard the dark rumors, the dark whispers that her friend is a witch. However, she's just desperate enough to seize this chance to chase her destiny. When she arrives at the Renoco house, it's very strange, it's dangerously close to a treacherous sea, and veiled eyes follow Josephine through endless connecting rooms. To save herself, she'll have to play to win, but in this house, victory is earned with blood. A lush new voice in horror arises in this riveting gothic set against the upheaval of 1986 Philippines and the people power revolution. I'm super excited to check this one out. I love a gothic horror novel. I love a haunted house or just a creepy house with a lot of secrets, and I think the unique setting of this one is going to make this one very engaging. Next up, coming out the 12th, we have Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. I'm not really sure what to categorize this book as. Maybe horror, maybe a little bit of sci-fi, I don't know. But this is about a woman who must go up against horrifying odds to save the world. 4 years ago, an unthinkable disaster occurred. In what was later known as the low probability event, 8 million people were killed in a single day, each of them dying in improbable and bizarre ways. A day of freak accidents that proved anything is possible no matter the odds. Luck is real now, and it's not always good. Vera, a former statistics and probability professor, lost everything that day, and she still struggles to make sense of the unbelievable catastrophe. To her, the LPE proved that the God of Order is dead and nothing matters anymore. When Special Agent Lane shows up on Vera's doorstep, she learns he's investigating a suspiciously and statistically impossibly lucky casino. He needs her help to prove the casino's success is connected to the deaths of millions, and it's Vera's last chance to make sense of a world that doesn't, because what's happening in Vegas isn't staying there, and she's the only thing that stands between the world and another deadly improbability. So I'm intrigued. I know this is a Chuck Tingle book, but honestly, like, the cover vibes and then also kind of the synopsis vibes kind of gives Chuck Palahniuk vibes. I don't know why, but I am cautiously intrigued about this one. It's not normally a premise that I would pick up. However, I did really love Bury Your Gays last year, so I do want to give this a go, as well as I think the back and forth between the two main characters of a special agent and then someone who is so ruled by math and statistics when they get together, I think that's going to be a really fun book dynamic. Next up, coming out August 12th, we have the only YA on this list, which is What Hunger by Katherine Dang. I really enjoy this cover. I feel like it really sets up the tone of this horror, and this is a haunting coming-of-age tale following the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants, Ronnie Nguyen, as she grapples with the weight of generational trauma while navigating the violent power of teenage girlhood for fans of Jennifer's Body and Little Fires Everywhere. It's the summer before high school, and Ronnie Nguyen finds herself too young for work, too old for cartoons. Her days are spent in a small backyard, dozing off to trashy magazines on a plastic lawn chair. In stark contrast stands her brother Tommy, the pride and joy of their immigrant parents. Their parents rarely speak of their past in Vietnam except through the lens of food. The family's meals are a tapestry of cultural memory. In the aftermath of the war, Me and Ba taught Ronnie and Tommy that meat was a dangerous luxury, a symbol of survival that should never be taken for granted. But when tragedy strikes, Ronnie's world is upended. Her sense of self and her understanding of her family are shattered. A few nights later, at her first high school party, a boy crosses the line and Ronnie is overtaken by a force larger than herself. This newfound power comes with an insatiable hunger for raw meat, a craving that is both a saving grace and a potential destroyer. What Hunger is a visceral emotional journey through the bursts and pitfalls of female rage. So I am excited for this one because I love a good cannibalism horror. I love a good female rage horror, and I am really intrigued by the background of this character and the nuances and the conversations that is going to add to the conversations of female rage and the exploration of consumption in this one. So definitely looking forward to that one. Jennifer's Body is one of my favorite cult classic horrors, so if this gives those vibes even a little bit, I'll be happy. Still on August 12th for a release date, we have 13 Months Haunted by Jimmy Juliano. This is from Dead 11 author, a twisty, edge-of-your-seat novel about a unique haunting in the early 2000s. I guess it's time. Time comes for us all. 2000s is now like a wave of nostalgia, and it's weird because I lived through that, so it's interesting starting to see more nostalgia pieces and more period time era historical horror taking place in the 2000s. But nevertheless, this takes place at a library. Piper Lowry, a public library clerk in charge of liaising with the local middle school, can tell right away there's something strange about the new girl in 8th grade. Avery Wallace won't touch any kind of technology, not even the computers at the library, and her mother comes to school with her every day, refusing to leave her side, not even when Avery uses the restroom. Seeing how isolated and lonely Avery is, Piper befriends her, but quickly realizes it just might be the worst decisions she's ever made, because there's something dark inside of Avery Wallace and it's spreading. This one seems like a pretty fun take on a possession horror. I'm guessing it's fun just because Dead 11 like really threaded the needle between the horror and then also like the fun. It was fun. It was goosebumps for adults. It was a very nostalgic 90s based horror, and I think this is going to be that, but for the 2000s. I'm interested in the possession story, the paranormal story, and then of course to revisit the 2000s with, I guess, technically a historical horror novel. Now we are moving on to August 19th, and the next book I want to talk about is Your Favorite Scary Movie: How the Scream Films Rewrote the Rules of Horror by Ashley Cullins, and this is a nonfiction about the Scream franchise, and I am interested in this one. I do like most of the movies in this franchise. I'm trying to read more nonfiction this year, so I feel like horror nonfiction would be a great way to go about that. This is the ultimate story of the Scream movie franchise, featuring interviews from more than 80 key players and an in-depth exploration of the creation and legacy of the films that revived a dying genre. Perfect for fans of Scream, horror fans, and cinephiles, this is the story of how a little movie about a ghost-faced killer terrorizing high schoolers overcame countless obstacles to become a historic success that still has audiences screaming to this day. We'll just go ahead and stay on horror nonfiction for a moment. Also coming out August 19th, we have Feral and Hysterical, Mother Horror's ultimate reading guide to dark and disturbing fiction by women, by Sadie Hartmann, aka Mother Horror. Featuring a foreword by prolific horror author Ania Ahlborn and 5 essays from Alma Katsu, Alexis Henderson, Christina Henry, Ray Wild, and Laura Purcell, this fully illustrated reader's guide is a must-have for any horror fanatic looking to get out of a reading slump or diversify their TBR pile. So this is a book just chock full of horror recommendations that all have female authors. This is kind of like the spiritual successor or sequel to 101 Horror Books to Read Before You're Murdered by Sadie Hartmann, and this one is just focusing on feminine authors. I am currently doing an entire series reading my way through the entirety of 101 Horror Books to Read Before You're Murdered, and I have found some fun gems that I had never heard of, and I also got to prioritize books that have been on my TBR for such a long time, so I'm having a great time with that series. I will be getting my hands on this book, and once I finish that series, I will start a series where I read my way through this book. Now, moving back to fiction, we have The End of the World as We Know It, New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand, edited by Christopher Golden and Brian King, with an introduction by Stephen King. This is an original short story anthology based on The Stand by Stephen King. Since its initial publication in 1978, The Stand has been considered Stephen King's seminal masterpiece of apocalyptic fiction, with millions of copies sold and adapted. And this is just a bunch of different authors all contributing a short story in the world of The Stand. Now, I think a reread of The Stand is in order. I have read The Stand. It's actually, I know this is a hot take, not one of my favorite Stephen King books. It's probably towards the bottom of my ranking. However, I am in a different place now than when I read it for the first time. So I think it could be interesting to reread it and see if I get something new out of it this time around, because I know it's very, very well loved, and then dive into this one. The collection of authors is pretty exciting to me. We have Nat Cassidy, V. Castro, S.A. Cosby, Tananarive Due, like so many people. Just the list is just hit after hit after hit. Chuck Wendig, Catriona Ward, Paul Tremblay, Cynthia Pelayo, Hailey Piper, like the list goes on and on. This is a very stacked anthology, and I'm very interested to check it out, because not only is it based on the imagination of one of my favorite authors, a lot of my favorite horror authors have also contributed to this one, so I'm very much looking forward to this one. Also coming out August 19th, we have The Possession of Alba Díaz by Isabel Cañas, and I am so excited for this one. First of all, love the cover, and I loved The Hacienda and Vampires of El Norte, and I'm very, very much excited for this possession story. So when a demonic presence awakens deep in a Mexican silver mine, the young woman it seizes must turn to the one man she shouldn't trust. It's taking place in 1765. Plague is sweeping through Zacatecas. Alba flees with her wealthy merchant parents and fiance Carlos to his family's isolated mine for refuge, but safety proves fleeting as other dangers soon bare their teeth. Alba begins suffering from strange hallucinations, sleepwalking, and violent convulsions. She senses something cold lurking beneath her skin, something angry, something wrong. Elias, who is haunted by a troubled past, came to the New World to make his fortune and escape his family's legacy of greed. Alba, as his cousin's betrothed, is none of his business, which is of course why he can't help but notice the growing tension between them every time she enters the room, and why he notices her deteriorate when the demon's thirst for blood gets stronger. In a fight for her life, Alba and Elias become entangled with the occult, the church, long-kept secrets, and each other, not knowing that one of these things will spell their doom. I love Isabel Cañas' Cañas' work. It's very gothic fiction that honestly has some chilling moments. In particular, the Hacienda had some very chilling and scary scenes for me, and she mixes that with romance so well. And I am not a romance reader. It's not one of my preferred genres, and it's something I typically steer away from, but for whatever reason, just the balance of horror and romance in Cañas' work just really works for me. So I am so excited for this possession story from her. The last book coming out August 19th is The Unseen by Ania Ahlborn. This is a terrifying new novel that pushes the boundaries of horror into a new realm. Isla Hansen, a mother reeling from a devastating loss, is beside herself when a mysteriously orphaned child appears on the outskirts of their secluded Colorado property. Although strange and unexplainable, the child's presence breathes new life into Isla. Isla? I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to get the audiobook and figure that out. It's Isla. But as the child settles in, Isla's husband Luke and their 5 children notice peculiarities that hint at something far beyond the ordinary, anomalies that change the very fabric of reality itself. The tension within the Hansen household grows, and with it the sense that there is something very wrong with the new kid in the house. So maybe kind of haunted house adjacent horror, but creepy little kid horror. Sign me up. This is an author that I really enjoy her work. And then moving on to the last release date, which is August 26th, we have How Bad Things Can Get by Darcy Coates. This is the Blair Witch Project meets Firefest. That's all I need to know. If you want me to read a book, just compare it to the Blair Witch Project and I'll pick it up. But this was supposed to be the party of the century. Miles of white sand beaches, lush jungle scenery, and a dark legend nobody dreamed might be all too true. When an online influencer and several hundred of his most loyal fans land on Prosperity Island, the plan is simple. 5 days of elaborate games, drinking, and suntanned fun. A week in paradise should have been a welcome respite. The only survivor of an infamous cult, Ruth wants nothing more than to keep her head down and not draw attention to herself. But when the true history of the island is revealed, along with its sinister connection to Ruth's past, and as guests go missing and games turn deadly, Ruth and the rest of the attendees are forced to question whether they've really been invited to paradise or whether something much darker and far bloodier is waiting for them just beyond the bonfire's light. So this is marketed as a thriller, but Darcy Coates is known for her horror, and in particular paranormal horror. So I don't know if this is going to be a thriller. It kind of sounds more like a horror to me, especially with that Blair Witch Project comp title. So I am very excited to check this one out. Next up, we have This Vicious Hunger by Francesca May, and this is a dark gothic fantasy of intoxication, obsession, and 2 women's desperate hunger for knowledge, whatever the cost. Thora finds herself destitute and an outcast after the sudden death of her husband, but a glimmer of hope arrives when a family friend offers her the chance to study botany under the tutelage of a famed professor. Once at the university, Thora becomes entranced by a mysterious young woman, Olea, who emerges each night to tend to the plants in the private garden below Thora's window. Hungry for connection, Thora befriends Olea through the garden gate, and their relationship quickly and intensely blossoms. Thora has finally found the freedom to pursue her darkest desires, but will it be worth the price? So this sounds like a very lush and romantic gothic story. It also kind of sounds, by the description, it doesn't say a time period, but it also sounds like this is historical gothic as well. The cover is gorgeous, and I think this one is just going to be such a lush gothic tale. Next up, we have another striking cover. If you're seeing this, it's meant for you by Leigh Stein, and this one is a gothic mystery thriller. That's what it's genre tagged as. And fates collide after a tarot influencer disappears from a decaying Hollywood mansion in this unnerving gothic mystery and audacious social comedy from the acclaimed author of Self-Care. So this is about an influencer hype house almost. I think that's that's where the social comedy comes into play. So after her boyfriend dumps her in a Reddit post, unemployed 39-year-old Dana accepts an unusual opportunity from a man she stopped speaking to 20 years ago. If Dana can help Craig transform his crumbling mansion into a successful hype house of influencers, he can restore his birthright to its former glory, and she can bring her career back from the dead. But missing from the mansion is Becca, a tarot card reader who built a rabid fandom with her cryptic soul-touching videos and then vanished. With 19-year-old Olivia, the newest member of the hype house and one of Becca's biggest fans, Dana begins to build a social media campaign around Becca's disappearance that will catapult the creators to new heights of success. The two women will make a shocking discovery that will upend everything. So this seems like a very wild time, like a satirical gothic mystery. I don't know, I'm intrigued. And then last, but most certainly not least, we have my most anticipated release of the year, and that is Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. I am so excited for this one. I love R.F. Kuang. She's one of my favorite authors, and this one just sounds so good. So we follow two graduate students who must set aside their rivalry and journey into hell to save their professor's soul, perhaps at the cost of their own. Alice has only ever had one goal: to become one of the brightest minds in the field of magic. She has sacrificed everything to make that reality: her pride, her health, her love life, and most definitely her sanity, all to work with Professor Jacob Grimes at Cambridge, the greatest magician in the world, that is, until he dies in a magical accident that could have possibly been her fault. Grimes is now in hell, and she is going in after him, because his recommendation could hold her very future in his now incorporeal hands, and even death is not going to stop the pursuit of Alice's dreams, nor will the fact that her rival, Peter, has come to the same conclusion. So I am so excited for this one. I do think I want to do some brushing up on, I think she said, not only Dante's Inferno, but also Alice in Wonderland, and I'm so excited by this one. I'm so intrigued. I also know I'm saying Katabasis. I have heard so many different pronunciations. I think it's going to be a thing just like Babel or Babel, how there are multiple different pronunciations, so I'll probably just go with whatever the audiobook production ends up saying. But for right now, I'm super excited for Katabasis, and I cannot wait to read this one. So there you have it. That is the end of this video. A bit of a long one, but there were so many interesting books that were coming out in August that I wanted to highlight. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below, let me know what book that comes out in August that you're most excited to read. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!